Hi, and welcome to Home Cooking with Russ. And what we're going to make today is a French onion soup. So we're going to make a fairly small batch. There's just 2 people in this household, and I'm going to use 3 onions. Now I happen to have available to me a white, a red, and a yellow, so that's what I'm going to use. You can kind of use what you have, and we're going to use a wine that we have available, beef broth, a little bit of thyme. We're going to flavor with black pepper and salt as desired. We're going to top a little later with Swiss cheese, and a couple of bay leaves will go in the soup, as well as just a little bit of brown sugar. What we're going to do is I'm going to get my pan going, and I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of butter in the pan, and we're going to get it going on the stove and melt the butter. So let's start with that. As Julia Child said, a little extra butter doesn't hurt. Anything that can be made with butter can be made better by using more butter, I think is how she put it, or something like that. So we'll just kind of scoop some butter in there. And while we do that, we will slice our onions. You can slice your onions as coarse or as fine as you desire. Now I happen to like a fairly coarse soup, so I'm not going to fine chop my onions. If you like yours fine chopped, you go right ahead. This is certainly going to make for a colorful soup. I think the use of a red onion is not really usual in the French onion soup. I don't really care. I happen to like red onions. And I have one laying around. And here it is. Put a little tail right in, just like that. Why not? Give that soup a nice stir. It has a ways to go, and we're going to come back to that. That's just getting started. We're going to boil this down, or we're going to cook it down really. We're not going to boil it down. We're going to kind of do a bit of a stir simmer here until you have a color of brown that you like. Now I read in other recipes where people cook this anywhere from no brown at all to very brown. So I'm going to go somewhere in the middle, which is where I like my soup, and we'll see how it comes out. We're going to put some thyme in our soup. I have a little bit of fresh thyme. It's only semi-fresh at this point. I'm going to fine chop. What I want to do is kind of pull the stems out of here. I'm going to pull the stems out of a batch of it. Only sort of like that. I'm going to peel that off. Alright, let's pull out the worst of the stems. Get out the worst of them here. Got that pretty well chopped up. Pretty well chopped up. We're just kind of, I've seen where people bundle this up and then pull it out later. I don't feel like pulling it out later, so we're going to just do the fine chop just like we have right here. Take out the worst of what we have. If you get a stem, feel free to spit it out. It's up to you. There we go. A couple more. We're going to take that, we're going to take that thyme, we're going to throw that right in, just like that. We're going to throw that right in, give that a stir. We're going to take a couple of bay leaves. Let's take 2. That one's half of one. We'll take another one. Bay leaves typically we will pull out later. You don't really want to bite into a bay leaf. Not really going to hurt you if you did. We're going to give just one little shot what we say a carefully measured tablespoon. We want just a little bit of salt, what they call to taste. We'll start with just a sprinkle. We want pepper, the same thing, what they say to taste. We'll probably add more pepper later. I try not to go too heavy on the pepper. What are we missing here? We have a carefully measured teaspoon of brown sugar and a little bit extra because I like brown sugar. We'll give that a stir. I'm waiting for this to melt down a little bit, to cook down I should say. I'm waiting for this to cook down a little bit. We're going to add some wine. Starting to smell good already. We don't want to burn it. Take that one right there, that one right there. That one's a little bit chunky. I'm going to cut that up just a little bit more. Let go. All right. Now, what we need we're just going to cook this down. This will take a little bit of time, not real long. I would say, I'm guessing 10, 12, 15 minutes. Depends on how brown you want it to be. So let's just kind of keep that going. Break up the chunks that are there. I still see some chunks. We want it all pretty well cooked down. You don't want to be actually chewing your way through your soup. You want to be able to drink it like normal soup. Eat it. Just like that. While we're waiting for that to cook down, we will open up our wine. Most recipes for French onion soup call for vermouth. Some just say use white wine. I happen to have some red wine, so we're going to use red. While the onions cook down over here a little bit, we need to make sure that this wine is good. We'd hate to put anything in our soup that wasn't good. Just a little onion right there. We'll throw that in late. I think it will be alright. I think that will work. I don't see why not. And we'll just wait on that until it's ready. Oh, this is starting to look a lot better. It's looking good. It's got a ways to go. It's looking good. Alright, our onions I think are pretty well cooked. They're cooked to about where I want them to be, and I guess that's all that counts. You're getting just a little bit of browning on the bottom, just a little bit of scrapings. I don't want to go overboard with that. It's pretty well cooked. At this point, we need to add our wine, and we're going to go, I call that a very carefully measured half a cup or so. And we're going to cook that down a little bit. Keep that boiling. Just a couple of minutes on the wine. While our soup is cooking down, let's cut up some baguette. Just normal baguette, half of which we had for lunch. We're going to take some slices off. And that's probably the wrong knife to use, but I'm going to use it anyway. I don't think my baguette will really care. nor will my soup. We'll kind of puff them out. A couple of them will be about right. Just about like that. That will be perfect. I'm going to cut just a couple more. Since if I'm cutting them, why not have a couple for myself? We're going to toast these on what I like to call my solar toaster. And the reason I call it my solar toaster is my little toaster oven in the corner, my electric one, but we're off the grid solar. So all the electricity we use is generated by solar electric. Set that for toast, set that for toast, start that about like that, and we'll check that when it goes dang. Alright, and that is looking really good. We see a bay leaf turning up. I'm going to leave him right in there. We'll just kind of let him stew for a while. I just pulled out a couple of stems from the thyme, which if I can grab them I will. There's another one right there. We'll get rid of him. He's soaked for a while. Alright, and we won't worry about it. That's looking really good. And we will add our broth very soon. And we have our solar toasted baguette right there. Which will be just right. I'm going to spread just a little butter on them. Put that right there. Back to the old Julia child. Anything that can be made with butter can be made better by using more butter. So I'm going to leave that right there. And now 4 of those will be set aside for our soup. 2 of those will be set aside for our cook. I think that we're probably ready. This is kind of a judgment call. We're going to add our broth. So let me get the broth over here, and we'll just kind of pour it in. Okay, now what we're using here today is just normal everyday beef broth. Purchased at Hannaford brand beef broth, fat-free. We'll try to keep the fat out of the cook. We're gonna use the whole container. Why not? Dump it in there. I don't want a little bit of beef broth in my fridge. There we go. Just give that a little bit of a stir. Now we have to simmer. I'm going to start this into a simmer, and then I'm going to simmer it for about, I'm going to say a half hour roughly. It may go just a little bit longer. And we'll add some pepper and maybe just a little bit of sugar as we go along. I'll sort of take a little taste and we'll see how it works, and then we'll come back to you as we finish it up. Now, that's a little hot. Now that we have cooked that's about a half hour, maybe 35 minutes. We've been kind of simmering that. It's been simmering pretty well. That's a good simmer right there. What you see right there is a perfect simmer. And we're ready for the next step, which is to I'm going to take it hot right out of the pan right here. Get that in there. And we'll put that just about like that. Once again. Just about like that. Now, I had 2 baguettes per crock, and my son visited, and now I have 1 baguette. So we'll add an untoasted. And we're going to put Swiss cheese on that, just about like that. Just about like that. And we'll throw this into the solar oven. Let that solar electric toast that down for me. We have my French onion soup toasting in my solar oven. It's been in there about 3 minutes, I would guess. Have it on a little timer down here, and I may shut it off before we hit 0. We'll take just a peek, which I shouldn't do. Oh yeah, that's looking good. It's got a ways to go. We'll let that get browned right up. Then we'll pop it out. We have just another minute or so left on our timer. We started at about 10 minutes. We're set on broil. We're set at the temperature of broil and the setting of broil. We have just another minute or so to go. I may turn it off early. We'll take a little peek. It's looking good. It's looking good. We'll give it just another minute. All right. Let's pull them out of there and see how they look. We have a Halloween hot mat made by my mother-in-law, who is an award-winning quilter. And that looks wonderful. That looks wonderful. We'll come right across to here. Set them down. And I'm going to let that cool just a minute before I put a spoon to it. Alright everyone, what we have here is a beautiful French onion soup. Yes, thank you oven, we know. Okay, what we have here is a beautiful French onion soup. Oh, it's got a nice crust on it. Nice little crust. We cut down into that baguette. And I'm sure that that's hot. That's good. That was hot. That's good. Okay, so that concludes the French onion soup. It's really quite simple. Cook up your onions, add your ingredients. Use what you have available. You're here for fun, you're cooking for yourself. Have a good time. We'll see you next time on Home Cooking with Russ.